Hello and welcome to today's episode that deals with human development, problems and solutions. I am Sakshi Mandwal and the subject expert today is Indrani Roy Chaudhary, Reader, Department of Economics, Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi.
There are two alternative views of human development. One is purely the economic ones, as it says that the human beings are basically the factors of productions. So, increase in human development index implies that the increase in the productivity as well as the increase in the income. So, increase in income obviously has an important contribution towards growth. So, from the growth perspective, human development is extremely important. The second view is obviously different from the first one. It says that from the philosophical point of view, human development has a lot of importance. Why it is important? Because in many religions it is mentioned that God has created human being, which is the highest form of consciousness. Like Bible has mentioned that God has created human beings on its own likeness, and that means human beings has the potential to raise its level to the level of God. So in that respect, it is the obligation or the responsibility of the human beings to attain certain level of highest form of consciousness. So now these two aspects, two views are complementary rather than competing, because as you if you just say take the economic aspects into account, then you will say that why growth is important, for growth for whom. But if you just combine the second aspect, that means the philosophical aspect, that growth is important because for the sake of improving or for the sake of achieving the highest form of consciousness, then these two in conjunctions with each other strengthens one another. So that's why we can just take I think that makes some sense, that why we focus on the human development and why so much emphasis is given, and the entire focus on the development literature has been diverted from the growth to development.
People are the real wealth of nations. The most basic prerequisites for human development are to lead long and healthy lives, to be knowledgeable, to have access to the resources needed for a decent standard of living, and to be able to participate in the life of the community. The Human Development Index, HDI, is a standard means of measuring well-being of people across the globe. HDI is a composite statistic used to rank countries by level of human development through a comparative measure of life expectancy, literacy, education and standards of living for each country worldwide.
Regarding the health, the basic indicator is the life expectancy. Regarding education, we take the mean years of schooling as well as the expected years of schooling. Whereas for the decent standard of living, we take the gross national income at the purchasing power parity. Regarding these three indicators, as you know that there are 185 countries which has been captured for the calculation of human development index. So you will have the data of 185 countries for all these three indicators. So from that from that data, say for the say for the health indicators, once you have to just calculate the health index, what you have to do, you have to find out the minimum value of the life expectancy of any of the countries which is figuring the at the minimum level, whereas the maximum value of the life expectancy. Apart from that, the country concerned will give you the actual value of the life expectancy. Now, once you get these three values, it is not so difficult to calculate the health index of the human development.
The conceptualization of HDI has its origins in the annual Human Development Reports published by the United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, since 1990. HDI, as opposed to the conventional measures of national development such as level of income and the rate of economic growth, provides a composite measure of three basic dimensions of human development: health, education, and income. Based on these broad indicators, the HDI till 2009 combined the following three dimensions. Number 1. Life expectancy at birth as an index of population health and longevity. Number 2. Knowledge and education as measured by the adult literacy rate with a weight of 2/3 and the combined primary, secondary and tertiary gross enrollment ratio with a weight of 1/3. Number 3. Standard of living as indicated by the natural logarithm of gross domestic product per capita at purchasing power parity. Some minor modifications in the last two dimensions of the HDI were introduced in the Human Development Report 2010. Thus, the mean years of schooling and the expected years of schooling are included as an indicator of education. Similarly, gross national income, that is GNI, per capita at purchasing power parity PPP US dollar is included as a decent standard of living. There has been a substantial progress in many aspects of human development across the globe. Most people today are healthier, live longer, are more educated and have more access to goods and services as compared to 40 to 50 years earlier. Even in those countries facing adverse economic conditions, people's health and education have greatly improved. Further, there has been progress not only in improving health and education and raising income, but also in expanding people's power to select leaders, influence public decisions, and share knowledge. Yet not all aspects of the story are positive. These years have also seen increasing inequality both within and across countries, as well as production and consumption patterns that have increasingly been revealed as unsustainable. Progress has varied and people in some regions such as Southern Africa and the former Soviet Union have experienced periods of regress, especially as far as health is concerned. The debate has thus crystallized around the centrality of vulnerability, risk, inequality and poverty in human development framework. India is faring badly in the Human Development Index. Between 1980 and 2010, India's HDI rose by 1.6% annually from 0.320 in 1980 to 0.519 today, which gives the country a rank of 119 out of 169 countries. Norway, with the HDI value of 0.938 in 2010, ranks first. Australia, with an HDI value of 0.937, ranks second, whereas Zimbabwe, with an HDI value of 0.140, occupies the last position in HDI ranking. In India, the life expectancy at birth in 2010 was 64.4 years, as compared to the observed maximum of 83.2 years by Japan in 2010. Mean years of schooling in India in 2010 was 4.4 years against 13.2 years in USA at 2000. Combined Education Index of India is 0.429 as against the observed maximum of 0.951 by New Zealand in 2010. All these reveal that India has a severe gap in all three broad indicators. Against this framework, the question is, why India is performing so poorly in HDI? It has to be understood that the poor performance of Indian in HDI is caused by the poor performance of each of the three indicators. Recognizing the diversity of Indian society across gender, caste, ethnicity, religion, income, education and region, there is a need to look beyond the basic indicators of health, education and poverty to address the complexity of each broad indicator. Let us now discuss the problems associated with each of these indicators. Education is one of the most important determinants of the well-being of households. Apart from its monetary returns, education is linked to other dimensions of well-being, including health, productivity, investments in the next generation, social networks, and civic participation. The past few decades have seen a rapid transformation of the Indian educational landscape. If we compare literacy data of different age cohorts from various sources, it is clear that literacy rates have increased sharply for all segments of Indian society. This improvement has reduced the gender gap, with girls rapidly catching up with boys in recent years. There is substantial improvement in the accessibility of primary education in terms of enrollment ratios, penetration of schools, etc. Public policy like Right to Children for Free and Compulsory Education Act 2009, public investment and flagship programs like Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan, national programs of midday meal schemes in schools, national program for education for girls at elementary level, etc. played an important role in this transformation. While literacy rates and school enrollment has grown rapidly and is a cause for jubilation, the literacy rate, enrollment ratio as indicators of educational attainment do not provide any guidance on the quality of education. One needs to look further to access the problem. As one moves deeper beyond simple accessibility, the challenges of keeping children in school emerge as a paramount challenge. Moreover, the poor quality of schooling remains a major cause for concern with low retention rates, high percentage of dropouts and failures. The India Human Development Survey IHD 2005 reports that 46% of the children between 8 to 11 years cannot read a simple 3-sentence paragraph. Arithmetic skills are even poorer. This problem of low retention in schools is triggered by the poor quality of teachers, large number of poor skilled para-teachers, teacher absenteeism, lack of teaching aids, overcrowded classrooms, crumbling school infrastructure, and corporeal punishment in schools. Regional disparities in a variety of educational indicators are striking. While states like Himachal Pradesh have made rapid strides, Bihar, Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh and Madhya Pradesh remain far behind. These inequalities can be seen even in basic skills such as literacy, but the differences are vast when the advanced skills such as knowledge of English or computer usage, etc. are considered. Moreover, inequalities between women from different states are even greater than those between men. This digital divide may lead to widening income differences between regions in the years to come and deserves greater attention than hitherto accorded. In addition to regional disparities, there are significant educational inequalities between different social and economic strata. Substantial gaps in educational attainment still remain between men and women and between children from Dalit, Adivasi, Muslim communities and other social groups. These educational inequalities are visible in school enrollment, type of schooling, educational expenditures and school performance. Many disadvantages begin as early as in primary school, which cannot be rectified through reservations in college levels. These inequalities get sharper across the gender and rural-urban gaps. Another noticeable feature in the Indian educational landscape is the privatization of education, both through increased enrollment in private schools and through reliance on private tuition. However, this rapid privatization is associated with the flight of middle-class families from government schools, possibly leading to the further deterioration of these schools and greater inequality between government and private school students. Secondary and senior secondary education serves as a bridge between elementary and higher education. It also forms the basis of skill formation in the future. According to the 11th five-year plan, the gross enrollment ratio, that is GER, in the secondary and senior secondary schools was only 39.91% in 2004 to 2005, and dropout rate was as high as 62%. The figures are much higher for the female students. This is sharply in contrast to the 100% GER in South Korea, 92% in Sri Lanka, 78% GER in Philippines. Moreover, female GERs of those states are even higher than the overall GERs in those countries. The higher education system at present suffers from several weaknesses such as substandard institutions, deterioration of academic standards, outdated curriculum, failure to maintain academic calendar, and lack of adequate support for research. The GER is around 11% as compared with the world average of 23.2%, 22% for the Asian countries, and 54% for the developed countries. A significant disparity exists in rural and urban areas along with the gender gaps. Efficiency of the workers depends considerably on their health. Thus, the World Development Report 1993 stated, improved health contributes to economic growth in 4 ways. Number 1, it reduces the production losses caused by worker illness. Number 2, it permits the use of natural resources that had been totally or nearly inaccessible because of disease. Number 3, it increases the enrollment of children in schools and makes them better able to learn. Number 4, it frees the alternative use of resources that would otherwise have to be spent on treating illness. The general health standard of an average Indian is quite low, though life expectancy at the time of birth has been steeply rising since 1951, which was 37.2 years for male and 36.2 years for the females. Since then, it has risen to 62.6 years for males and 64.2 years for females in 2006 to 2007. The substantial achievement is primarily caused by 2 developments in the early plan periods. Number 1, the drastic check of some deadly epidemics. Number 2, reduction in the infant mortality rate by good vaccination network. However, there has been a very little improvement of the general health standards of the multitude of population. The poor health standard is clearly reflected by the high incidence of morbidity in the country. The main reasons for the poor health as often cited are poor nutritious diet, poor hygiene, and inadequate support in preventive medical care. Moreover, the health standard deteriorates with the abject poverty and deprivation. This is somewhat inevitable in a country where even now around 30% of the population lies below the poverty line. Another 25% are too poor to incur out-of-pocket medical expenditure on health grounds. There is significant regional disparity across states. India Human Development Survey 2005 reports that regional inequalities in reported morbidity and medical care may be even greater than regional inequalities in wealth and education. The southern states like Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh consistently lead the country in reporting low levels of short-term morbidity and higher levels of health care. Southern states have lower infant and child mortality and greater levels of vaccination than the central states, outperforms the rest of the country on every indicator of maternal medical care. Better medical care undoubtedly contributes to the South's health advantage. The consistent urban bias in Indian healthcare also deserves closer attention. City and town dwellers can access better medical care and report suffering from minor illness less often. Surprisingly, they spend somewhat less money on a typical minor illness than a villager. The consistency of the urban advantage across so many indicators testifies to the pervasive inequality rural residents suffer. The preventive and curative public health care in some of the states like Bihar, UP, Madhya Pradesh, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, etc. are almost in a state of collapse. This weakness has paved the way to the higher spread of private health care. The subsequent shocks on account of out-of-pocket expenditure on fatal preventive health care of a poor severely affects their life cycle income flows and may take some generations to recover. Lack of financial resources is an important constraint for attaining health, education, gender equality within households. Indian society documents tremendous diversity in income and expenditure across different segments, with some households facing substantial vulnerability. While income levels are associated with the access to livelihood support, productivity of land, individual human capital, consumption levels are affected further by household composition. Various dimensions of income disparities are cited below. There exists a huge interstate disparity. Agricultural prospects, industrialization, urbanization, better governance, political stability, etc. makes some states growing faster and perform much better than the others. While income levels are high in the northern states like Punjab, Haryana, Himachal Pradesh, it is substantially low in the central states like Bihar, Orissa, Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh. Moreover, historical accidents as well as state policies have led to higher economic growth in some states than in others, resulting in widening interstate disparities. Despite improvements in access to education and affirmative actions by the Indian government, social groups that were traditionally at the lower rung of the Indian hierarchy are still economically worse off. Thus, poverty and low incomes are concentrated in Dalit, Adivasi, Muslims and OBCs. Another aspect of vulnerability that deserves attention is that many families survive at the margins. Illness or natural calamities like droughts or floods can propel them quickly into poverty. These marginal households have very few resources to draw on when adversity strikes. Gender forms another axis along which found tremendous income disparities. The IHDS, the NSS and the census record extremely low rates of female labour force participation. When women are in the labour force, they tend to work mostly on family farms or caring for livestock. Even when women engage in paid work, their daily income is only 53 paise per rupee earned by men in rural areas and 68 paise in urban areas. Moreover, women's economic vulnerability is compounded by their social vulnerability. The stark economic differences exist in the rural and urban regions. Inequalities between cities and villages and amongst the rich and the poor states are not new. However, recent economic changes have heightened these disparities. As agriculture has stagnated, urban employment has come to play an even greater role in shaping economic well-being. Let me now discuss briefly the solutions. The phenomena of various facets of inequalities across social groups, religion, gender, rural-urban inequalities, interstate and regional imbalances are leading to underinvestment in physical and human capital. This in turn affects all the human development indicators through various channels. Thus, an improvement in human development in India requires a multi-pronged holistic approach along all these dimensions. In improving the performance of the access to knowledge as one of the indicator, it is thus a time to focus on the quality of schooling rather than on enrollment only. Improving the quality of education and retention level in the primary level will have a significant positive impact on the secondary and higher education. This suggests that a focus on school quality should be one of the highest priorities in the coming decades. The wave of privatization in school education is distortionary in creating a qualitative divide between public and private schools. The potential for stemming this tide in urban areas seems to be very low. In rural areas, however, increased attention to school quality in government schools may succeed in bridging an incipient divide. Policy incentives should be drawn properly to curb the regional imbalances and gender gaps in education. In health, the greatest challenge to health policy are posed by high levels of household health expenditures combined with high use of private health care. Thus, improvement of the health indicator cannot be made without the massive improvement in public health system across the country. In order to eliminate the various discrepancies, policy actions should be carefully geared towards more redistributions. Quite often, government policies are very conflicting and not well targeted. Such kind of policy implementations most of the time leads to poor outcome. Pro-poor targeted public investments are hardly hit by poor delivery channels, which need to be strengthened by appropriate strategies. Reduction in corruption and better governance are critically required to improve the delivery channels of the public distribution systems meant for the poor and destitute. Thus, the choice before the nation is clear: to invest more in social sector like health, hygiene, education and allied services with the right strategies, policies and interventions. This is what we have for you for today. Thank you all for listening to me. Have a good day.